Chosen one, anchor your spirit to what I am about to say right now. That voice in your head telling you that your kindness is weakness, silence it. The enemy is working overtime against you this week for one reason, and one reason only. He knows what gets unleashed when you finally reach your limit. It all shifts tomorrow. The confusion about who you are, the exhaustion of being misread, the warfare against your character. But here is what you need to hear clearly. It is not shifting because you finally snapped. It is shifting because of every single moment you chose not to. Think back to that moment this week when someone pushed you past what most people would have tolerated, when they took your silence for surrender, when they mistook your patience for permission. You did not know it then, but that restraint was not retreat. That was the most dangerous thing you have ever done to your enemy. You did not lose that moment. You loaded a weapon. God cleared your schedule today and brought you directly to this message for a reason. So lock your attention here, because what I am about to deliver is not encouragement, it is a verdict. You did not find this recording by accident. The algorithm did not bring you here. The Holy Spirit did. This is a divine appointment scheduled before the foundations of the earth. You are standing at a threshold. Stay until the very last second of this message, because in the next few minutes, I am going to hand you the legal decree that exposes why your kindness is the most lethal force the enemy has ever encountered. I am going to walk you through the moment your restraint became your greatest act of spiritual warfare. And at the end, I am going to give you the declaration that seals this truth into your identity, so the enemy can never use your gentleness against you again. Do not click away. Your future self is begging you to stay, because if you leave now, you will walk back out into the world, still believing the lie that being good means being weak. I know what the last 72 hours have felt like. It has not just been heavy, it has been personal. Like the pressure was specifically designed to find every soft place in you and press directly into it. Maybe you were lying in bed this week, running a conversation back through your mind, rehearsing everything you could have said, everything you should have said, asking yourself why you stayed quiet when they deserved every word you held back. Or maybe someone in your life, someone who claims to know you, looked directly at your patience and called it passivity, called it cowardice, and something deep inside you stirred. Not in anger, in recognition. You feel it, do you not? That stillness beneath the surface, that silence that has weight to it, that knowing that if you ever fully released what lives inside you, the room would never be the same. And in this season, the enemy has been whispering a very specific lie into that space. Listen to your thoughts. He has been telling you that your niceness has cost you, that you have been too good, too forgiving, too available, and that people have taken advantage of every open door your gentleness created. He is replaying that moment. The one where you extended grace and got nothing in return. The one where you protected someone who later used that same protection against you. The one where you stayed when leaving would have been easier and more justified. The accuser is calling that foolishness. He is telling you that your goodness has been your greatest liability, and that if you had been harder, colder, less merciful, you would be further ahead right now. But I need you to hear what the scripture actually says about who you are. Proverbs 30:30 speaks of the lion, which is mighty among beasts and does not retreat before any. And the Spirit of God does not give you a spirit of timidity, but of power and of love and of a sound mind. Listen to that pairing, power and love. Not power or love. Not power despite love. Power through love. Sound mind directing both. The enemy has been lying to you about your own architecture. He has convinced you that your compassion and your strength are in conflict, that the softer you are, the less dangerous you become. But that is the deception, because a person who has never developed the capacity for love cannot be trusted with power, and a person who has never developed the capacity for power cannot fully protect what they love. You are both. Fully. The heaviness you feel is not the weight of being too much. It is not the burden of a spirit that has been too open, too forgiving, too present for people who did not deserve it. The heaviness you feel is the weight of a force that has been compressed for so long that the release, when it comes, will not look like rage. It will look like authority. You think the moments you chose peace were moments you surrendered ground. But let me reframe your reality right now. Every time you absorbed what should have broken you and kept moving, you were not losing. You were being sharpened. Every time you stayed quiet when the room expected you to fracture, you were not being defeated. You were being prepared. The most dangerous version of you is not the version that reacts. It is the version standing right here, right now, that has been through everything you have been through and still chose to remain, still chose integrity, still chose to lead with love while carrying the full knowledge of what you are capable of when that love is tested. That is not weakness. That is a level of self-mastery that most people never reach, and that the enemy fears more than anything you could have done in anger. Most chosen ones who hear a message like this feel the fire for about 48 hours. Then the dryness returns, the doubt creeps back, the silence gets louder, and within a week they are exactly where they were before, waiting, wondering, spiritually exhausted. That cycle breaks today, or it does not. The inner sanctum puts a prophetic word from the throne room in your hands every single morning, 365 days of hearing God before the world can speak first. The link is in the first pinned comment. It will not be there forever, and neither will this window God just opened for you. You've been called too sensitive, too soft, too forgiving, and somewhere along the way you started to believe them. But what if everything they labeled as weakness is actually the most dangerous thing about you? Before we go any deeper, I want you to know there's a full guide created specifically for people like you, the ones who feel everything deeply, who keep choosing peace even when they're bleeding inside. It's called The Chosen One's Blueprint, and it will show you exactly how to turn your sensitivity into your greatest weapon. The link is in the description. Get it. You're going to need it for what I'm about to show you. Now let's get into this. There is a type of person that the world has consistently misread. They walk softly. They speak with care. They absorb pain like the earth absorbs rain quietly, without spectacle, without complaint. They are the ones who notice when someone's eyes carry sadness that their smile is trying to conceal. They are the ones who sit with grieving people, not because they have the right words, but because they understand, in their bones, that presence itself is a form of medicine. They give generously, not from overflow, but sometimes from their last reserves, because something in them cannot witness a need and walk past it, and because they don't erupt, because they don't retaliate, because they extend grace in spaces where most people would extend fists. The world looks at them and calls them weak, calls them naive, calls them easy targets. But here's what the world doesn't understand. The ocean is calm until it isn't. And when it moves, when it truly moves, it reshapes coastlines. It swallows ships whole, not out of cruelty, but because that is the nature of depth when it is finally disturbed. The same water that laps gently at the shore on a summer afternoon carries within it the memory of every storm that ever crossed its surface. The same tide that children play in without fear is the same force that has carved canyons into solid rock over thousands of years. Patience and power are not opposites. In nature, they are almost always the same thing, wearing different expressions depending on the season. You are not gentle because you lack power. You are gentle because you have learned to govern it. And there is a difference between someone who cannot fight and someone who has chosen not to. One is empty. The other is a reservoir. One lashes out because it has nothing left to lose. The other holds back because it understands the weight of what it carries and refuses to spend it recklessly. There is a dignity in that restraint that the world rarely pauses long enough to recognize. But heaven sees it, and heaven counts it. Think about Moses. The Bible calls him the meekest man on earth, not the weakest, the meekest. There is a difference the original language captures that most translations barely touch. The Hebrew word used carries the image of a trained warhorse, an animal of enormous power and speed, capable of tremendous force, but disciplined, responsive, submitted to the hand of its rider. That is meekness, not the timid child in the corner, not the doormat absorbing every boot, the trained force, the governed strength. Meekness is not the absence of strength. It is strength submitted to purpose. Moses had already proven he could deliver a lethal blow. He did it in Egypt before the burning bush, before the plagues, before the parting of the sea. The fire was always in him. The capacity for decisive, forceful action was never absent. But the man who could physically take a life was the same man chosen to carry the law of life down a mountain. His restraint wasn't cowardice. It was a covenant. It was the evidence that he could be trusted not just with power, but with holy power, with the kind of authority that does not serve the ego, but serves the calling. And when heaven finally released him to move, Egypt shook. Pharaoh's entire empire, its military, its economy, its religious structure, its very identity, was dismantled by a man the world had written off as a fugitive shepherd with a speech impediment. The same is true of you. But here's where it goes deeper. Because your gentleness is real, your kindness is not a strategy. It comes from a place that has genuinely been cracked open by experience, by loss, by love, by the kind of pain that either destroys you or expands you. You have sat in rooms where the grief was so thick it had weight. You have loved people who did not know how to receive love without damaging it. You have stayed when leaving would have been easier, forgiven when bitterness would have been justified, and rebuilt yourself with hands still shaking from the last collapse. You chose expansion. Every single time, even when it cost you something significant, you chose expansion over contraction, grace over grievance, growth over the comfortable numbness of shutting down. And that expansion, that hard-won, scar-tissued, beautifully earned capacity to hold complexity without collapsing, that is where your dangerous nature lives. You see, most people are predictable because they are reactive. They respond to offense with offense, pain with pain, push with push. They are essentially mirrors reflecting back whatever energy arrives at their threshold without filtering, without choosing, without the crucial pause between stimulus and response. And the world knows how to manage predictable people. It knows their buttons. It knows their breaking points. It knows exactly which words to use and which memories to invoke to send them spinning off course. Predictable people can be neutralized. They can be baited. They can be made to discredit themselves simply by being pushed at the right angle at the right moment. But a person who absorbs, who processes, who remains centered even when being provoked, that person cannot be controlled. And what cannot be controlled will always be feared. What cannot be baited cannot be neutralized. What cannot be pushed off course cannot be stopped. And this leads us to something most people miss entirely. The reason you've been provoked so relentlessly isn't random. It never was. There is something in the spiritually perceptive, something in the person who walks with unusual grace that activates a very specific kind of opposition. It is not accidental. It is not just bad luck or difficult circumstances or an unfortunate pattern of attracting the wrong people. There is a targeting that happens to souls of a certain depth, a certain assignment, a certain unawakened magnitude. Not because you are threatening to become something, because you already are something. The blueprint is already written. The capacity is already present. The calling is already sealed. And the forces, the people, the systems designed to keep certain souls from rising, they can sense that. They may not be able to name it. They may not even consciously understand why they feel compelled to diminish you, challenge you, doubt you, or undermine you. But something in them responds to something in you, the way darkness responds to the approach of light, not with welcome, but with resistance. They press where others wouldn't even think to press. They test limits that most people never even approach. They seem to find, with uncanny precision, the exact places where you are still healing, the exact wounds that haven't yet fully closed, the exact insecurities that you thought you had buried deep enough that no one would find them. Why? Because your breakthrough, when it comes, won't just be yours. It will release something around you. It will wake people up. It will give permission to every person watching your life to believe that their own transformation is possible. And that is precisely what must be delayed, undermined, discouraged at every possible turn by anything that benefits from people staying asleep, staying small, staying convinced that their sensitivity is a liability rather than a lantern. But stay with me, because what's coming next will likely be the thing you've never heard anyone say out loud, and it's the part that changes everything. Here's what actually happens inside a person who has been consistently kind in the face of provocation, consistently gracious in the face of cruelty, consistently soft in environments that rewarded hardness. Something begins to build that has no equivalent in the natural world. You develop a kind of interior fire that cannot be fabricated. It cannot be manufactured by ambition or desire or even prayer alone. It cannot be purchased, borrowed, inherited, or imitated. It is forged. Like a blade is forged through repeated application of heat and pressure and precise, deliberate shaping. The blacksmith does not apologize to the metal for the temperature of the furnace. The heat is not the enemy of the blade. The heat is the architect of it. Every time you chose grace when you wanted to retaliate, you were being shaped. Every time you swallowed your pain and kept moving, you were being sharpened. Every time you showed up with love, when contempt would have been understandable, another layer of dross was being burned away. Another degree of precision was being added to the edge of who you are becoming. You didn't know it then. You may have called it survival. You may have called it endurance. You may have looked at yourself in those moments and seen nothing more than someone trying to make it through the day. Heaven called it preparation. Think about David before Goliath. Before the valley, before the anointing oil ran down his face, before any public stage or national recognition, there were the fields. There was the long, unglamorous, unwitnessed work of a shepherd boy doing his job in the middle of nowhere. There was the bear. There was the lion. And David faced both alone, in obscurity, with nothing to prove to anyone but himself and God. No audience, no record, no reward beyond the survival of the flock he had been entrusted to protect. He wasn't just protecting sheep in those moments. He was becoming someone. He was learning the texture of his own courage. He was discovering that, when everything in him screamed to run, something deeper in him chose to stand. He was building a reference library of personal testimony that no one else could write for him and no one else could take from him. And by the time he stood in front of a giant that had paralyzed an entire army, not just individual soldiers, but a whole trained military force, men with armor and experience, and every earthly reason to believe they could win, David wasn't drawing on courage alone. He was drawing on a history of private victories that no one else had witnessed. He wasn't being brave in that valley. He was being faithful to a pattern that had already been established in the dark. The lion and the bear were not obstacles to his destiny. They were the construction of it. The very encounters designed to end him were the ones that built him into someone who could not be ended. Your private battles, the ones you have fought alone, in the dark, with no applause, with no one watching, with no one even aware of how much it cost you just to get out of bed some mornings and choose to try again. Those are your lion and your bear. every relationship that broke you open, and yet somehow you survived. Every betrayal you processed without becoming bitter. Every night you sat with your own pain and chose mourning anyway. Those moments were not wasted. They were not detours. They were the curriculum. And they are why you can stand when others fall. They are why the thing that would collapse someone else will find, when it arrives at your threshold, that you have already been there, already survived something adjacent, already built a muscle that exists because of the very suffering that tried to destroy you. But let me challenge you with something, because this is where it gets uncomfortably honest. You have been using your kindness correctly, but have you been using your fire correctly? Because there is a version of gentleness that is pure and grace-filled, the kind that comes from genuine abundance, from a heart so full that it naturally overflows into the lives around it. And then there is a version that is actually fear wearing the costume of virtue. A version that has learned to speak the language of spirituality while quietly serving the agenda of self-protection. A version that calls itself forgiving when it is actually avoiding the confrontation that real forgiveness sometimes requires. That calls itself peacekeeping when it is actually self-erasure. That wraps conflict aversion in the language of love so that it never has to examine the terror underneath. That says, I don't want to hurt anyone, when the deeper, more honest, more vulnerable truth is, I am terrified of what happens if I fully show up, because the last time I did, it was used against me. And here's the part no one wants to hear. There is a specific kind of person who has spent so long being the most understanding person in every room that they have slowly, quietly, almost imperceptibly stopped understanding themselves. You have been so busy making space for everyone else's journey that you have barely begun your own. You have translated other people's pain with fluency, while your own has been sitting in a corner, speaking a language you keep promising to learn, but never quite find the time for. You have extended compassion in every direction except inward. You have been generous to a fault with your empathy, your time, your presence, your energy, and somewhere in that generosity, you forgot to keep some back for the person who needs it most, which is the person doing all the giving. And God, the universe, whatever you call, the force that placed you here with this exact set of gifts, this exact sensitivity, this exact depth, is waiting for you to turn that same grace on yourself, not as a reward, not as something you earn once you've helped enough people or suffered enough or proven enough, but right now, today, as an act of radical spiritual obedience to the truth that you were made in the image of something whole, and wholeness begins by being honest about the parts of yourself you have been too afraid to face. Coming up is the insight that I believe you have been circling your entire life without landing on. Stay with me just a moment longer, because here is what is true about provocation that almost no one teaches. When you are provoked, truly provoked, pushed against in the places where you are still tender, challenged in the areas where you have not yet finished healing, and you do not react from wounding but from wholeness, something extraordinary occurs. Something shifts in the atmosphere of the room, in the dynamic of the relationship, in the spiritual architecture of the moment. Your response is no longer just a response. It becomes a statement. It becomes a demonstration. It becomes living proof of something that the world around you cannot explain and therefore cannot dismiss. Because the world has categories for anger, it has categories for retaliation, it has categories for the breaking point and the explosion and the collapse. It does not have a category for someone who has every reason to shatter and instead remains whole. When a person who has every reason to be bitter is not bitter, that is not just impressive, that is prophetic. It speaks into the room before a single word is uttered. It preaches without opening a mouth. It testifies to the reality of an inner life that transcends circumstance, to the existence of a peace that genuinely passes understanding, not as a theological concept, but as a witnessed, tangible, undeniable reality standing right in front of them. And that testimony carries weight that no argument, no achievement, no reputation, no eloquence can manufacture or replicate. This is why Paul wrote from prison, not despite his chains through them. The man who had been beaten, shipwrecked, stoned, abandoned, misrepresented, and imprisoned found a way to write about joy that has outlasted every empire that ever tried to silence him. The limitation became the amplification, the suffering became the signal, the chains that were supposed to end his influence became the context that gave his words their unshakable authority. Because when a man can write about peace from a prison cell, you cannot argue with his peace. You cannot call it theoretical. You cannot dismiss it as the comfortable philosophy of someone who has never suffered. And people who should have been writing his eulogy ended up reading his letters for 2,000 years, and they are still reading them. Because there is something in words written from that kind of place that carries a frequency that ordinary words cannot touch. Your provocation is not punishment, it is positioning. The very thing that has been pressing against you has been pressing you into a shape that will serve a purpose larger than the pressing. The trial that you have been surviving has been simultaneously constructing the testimony that someone else desperately needs to hear. You are not just going through it, you are going through it so that you can come through it in a way that leaves a door open for someone who is still standing at the entrance of the same darkness, wondering if there is any possibility of the other side. And now here's the layer that I need you to sit with. Because we have been building towards something, and this is it. The thing that has been blocking you is not the people who provoked you. It is not the environment that tried to diminish you. It is not the circumstances that seemed determined to undermine every attempt at forward movement. It is not even the wounds from the past that still find ways to resurface at inconvenient moments, in unguarded hours, in the quiet between sleep and waking when the defenses are down and the old voices get loud again. The thing that has been holding you back is your own unresolved relationship with your power. You have seen what you are capable of, not just physically, not just intellectually, but spiritually, emotionally, dimensionally, and somewhere deep inside. You made a quiet agreement that you would limit yourself, not loudly, not with full awareness, not as a conscious, deliberate choice, but as a slow and subtle accommodation to the reality of having been hurt. Because full power felt unsafe, because the last time you were fully yourself, someone weaponized it. Someone took the thing you offered openly and used it as leverage. Someone saw your depth and mistook it for vulnerability. Someone encountered your light and, rather than being illuminated by it, tried to extinguish it. And for a moment, for a season, for longer than you would like to admit, it worked. Because somewhere between the person you were born as and the person the world shaped you to be, you learned that it was safer to be smaller. You learned that staying below the radar meant fewer attacks. You learned that dimming your own light preemptively was less painful than having someone else dim it for you. And that logic made sense once. It protected you when protection was what you needed. But you are not in that place anymore. And the strategy that kept you safe in one season is the very thing strangling your expansion in this one. And you have been faithful to that agreement ever since. Faithful in ways you don't even fully recognize yet. In the way you hesitate before speaking your full truth. In the way you shrink in rooms where expansion is available. In the way you offer qualified versions of your gifts rather than the whole, unedited, unapologetic magnitude of what you actually carry. In the way you are still, even now, waiting for some external confirmation that it is safe to be everything you already are. But here is the unexpected truth, the one that reframes everything that came before it, that reorganizes every narrative you have been telling yourself about why you are where you are and what you are allowed to become. Your gentleness was never the ceiling. It was the foundation. It was the ground floor of something that was always meant to rise. God never asked you to choose between being kind and being powerful. That was a false binary handed to you by people who needed you to believe it, so they could remain comfortable in the presence of something they could not contain. The real invitation, the one heaven has been extending this entire time, the one written in every experience you have had and every character trait you have developed and every private victory you have claimed, is to be both, completely, simultaneously, without apology and without explanation. To be the ocean at rest and the ocean in motion. To be the voice that builds and the voice that confronts. To be the hands that heal and the hands that refuse to be shaken. To be tender without being fragile. To be fierce without being cruel. To be immovable without being closed. To be soft in the places that require softness and steel in the places that require steel. And to trust yourself finally, completely trust yourself to know the difference. You were never meant to be tamed. You were meant to be trusted. And a soul that can be trusted with depth, with fire, with the full weight of who they are, that is not a danger to the world. That is a gift the world has been waiting for without knowing what to call it. That is the thing people sense when they encounter you and feel something shift in their own interior that they cannot quite name. That is why certain conversations with you leave people feeling more alive, more seen, more possible. Because you carry something. You have always carried something, and the world needs you to stop apologizing for it and start walking in the fullness of it. So do not go to sleep tonight carrying yesterday's version of yourself, not the diminished version, not the qualified version, not the version that learned to make itself palatable to rooms that were never worthy of your full presence, the person who needed permission, the person who needed someone to finally see them and call them out by name and say, yes, you, exactly you, all of you. The person who was waiting for the world to stop calling them too much before they allowed themselves to be everything. That waiting is over. The permission is not coming from outside. It never was. It was always an inside job, and the moment has arrived. Place your hand on your heart and speak this out loud. Mean every word. Let it land in your body, not just your mind. Let it travel down into the places where the old agreements were made, and let it speak truth into those rooms and dissolve what was never meant to stay. I am not too much. I have never been too much. I am exactly the measure that heaven designed, placed here on purpose, for a purpose that does not require anyone else's agreement. I release the agreement I made with smallness. I release the idea that my gentleness disqualifies my greatness. I reclaim my fire. I reclaim my depth. I reclaim every part of myself I handed over to rooms that could not hold it. I am dangerous, in the most divine sense of the word, dangerous to cycles that need to end, dangerous to lies that need to be exposed, dangerous to every limitation that assumed I would never wake up. I am awake. I am moving. And I carry my softness and my strength as one, because they always were. If this message found you today, it was not by accident. The fact that you are still reading, still here, still willing to sit with this truth and let it do its work in you, that is not coincidence. That is correspondence. That is the universe confirming something it has been trying to say to you for a long time, through 1,000 different messengers and 1,000 different moments. Share it with someone who has been called too sensitive, too kind, too quiet. They need to hear this. The person in your life who gives everything and receives so little, who keeps showing up with grace when grace is not being returned, who has been told in 1,000 subtle and not so subtle ways that they are too much and not enough, simultaneously send this to them. Because some messages need a human hand to carry them to the person they were meant for. And if you are ready to go even deeper, if you are ready to take everything that has been stirred in you today and turn it into a deliberate, intentional, structured pathway forward, the Chosen One's blueprint is waiting for you in the description. Your breakthrough is not coming, it is already here. Walk into it.